Welcome back to Inside the Game with CNHI Sports. I'm George Bremer of CNHI Sports Indiana, and we'll go around the country to check on some of the game's biggest highlights. Let's make our first stop in Boston with Bill Burt. Now it's time for our regular spot with Bill Burt. And Bill, we touched on the schedule just a little bit last week, a little bit about how crazy the league has made this into a massive event when they're just announcing dates for games that we already knew were scheduled. But there is one in particular, I think, that stands out. Fans across the league are going to be paying attention. Tom Brady and the world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming to Foxborough. He's going to visit New England for the first time. I imagine it's going to be an incredible event up there.
Yeah, so these tickets, the tickets aren't even printed yet, and they're already talking about this game being the most expensive ticket in the history of Boston sports, meaning more than a Super Bowl possibly, like $15,000 for the bottom section across from the team, and the club level seats $12,000. So with the new ticket pricing, this is what happens, and I think it's cool. Yes, it's going to be a Sunday night game. It's week 4, October 3rd. And the game starts at 8:20. This is going to be, and Brady's also having fun with it. I mean, he's already mentioned it a couple times. Whoa, there's a game coming. Brady's father, in fact, was trolling a Boston radio station. He called into the show, apparently, and basically said, oh, yeah, we can't wait for that game and leave New England undefeated. So I guess they're already going to beat the first 3 teams and then beat New England for the 4th. So there's a lot at stake. I will say this, it will be probably the most anticipated for a regular season football game. I don't know, ever. Probably in the social media times, yes, probably ever. And everyone will watch it because it is a Sunday night. It's not a 4:30 or 1 o'clock game. It's the only game in town. And, I got to be honest, Brady's having fun with it. Gronk's mentioned it a couple. Oh, yeah, there is a big game there in early October. I'm going home. And he was playing the opposite. Like, I can't wait to see all my friends, and the Patriots are the best organization. We're not hearing that out of Brady. I will say is what's going to be interesting is Belichick's sort of reaction. Does he come out and say, and disarm people and just say Brady's, best ever, and they're the best team. They won the Super Bowl. We're trying to compete with them, and sort of disarm, because I know he doesn't believe that, and I know he believes the greatest part, but I believe Belichick has been working already on this game, which I believed happened last year with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson after they got embarrassed the year before. 8-0 team went into Baltimore and got embarrassed, and it basically ruined the Patriots season. And I believe Belichick does not want to lose this game.
You don't think it's just going to be a "we're on to Tampa Bay" press conference?
Yeah, that's a good one. Or no, we're on to Houston, which is the Patriots' next game in Houston, by the way. No, it's going to be big, and there's a lot at stake. The Brady people, the Belichick people. I don't want to say I'm on one side. I think they both they're both the greatest, and they are very similar. That's the thing. Very similar guys. One's a model who marries models. The other's a, goofball, nerdy looking guy, but their insatiable need to win and their fear of losing is equal. And I think that's why they came together. And that's why this game, I'll go back to the Parcells-Belichick game when Parcells was with the Cowboys and they hadn't spoken in like a couple of years. That buildup was huge, but that was the Cowboys, who were a decent borderline playoff team. Patriots were great then, but that was before they went on their second Super Bowl run. So this game, because I think the Patriots are going to be very good this year. I think, there's 3 or 4 games in the schedule. Patriots win. They're going to compete with Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and in their division, which I think a lot of people already just give the division AFC to Buffalo, deserved. But Uh, this game is going to be the buildup is going to be as big as we've ever seen.
Yeah, I know 8 years ago. It's hard to even imagine it was 8 years ago. I was just thinking about that now when Peyton Manning came into Indianapolis for the first time with the Broncos. That night was unlike any other. It felt like a playoff game. The whole week build up to it. Jim Irsay had the Star Wars numbers comment that still gets repeated in this area to this day. And then, I think Denver came in undefeated, I want to say. It was like week 6, week 7, somewhere in there. It's been a while. I've slept since then. But it was a really, the atmosphere around it was unlike any other regular season game I could remember. Sunday night game, they did a video tribute to Manning before the game. He had tears in his eyes warming up on the sideline. It was like nothing we'd ever seen. And then the game starts, the Broncos get hot early, and it's probably one of the loudest moments I've heard in the new stadium. I call it new since 2008. Still feels new. At Lucas Oil Stadium, Robert Mathis had a strip sack on Manning. Turnover, the Colts recover, really turned the game around. Is still an iconic play here. The Colts win the game. They ended up going 3-1 against Peyton, which was interesting, in that regard. But I think when this kind of situation happens, such a unique thing, someone who meant so much to a franchise coming back, it really is unlike anything else that happens during an NFL season.
So, listen, I think that's exactly what's going to happen this game. I'm not so much the Patriots will win, but there's going to be moments where, because look, a lot of people are divided here. A lot of people blame Belichick for this, and I'm assuming that happened with the Colts. And they had the first pick of the draft, and they got luck. So people saw light at the end of the tunnel. But Brady won the Super Bowl last year. So then it's like, all right, I don't know if I'm really going to pull for him anymore. And then it becomes Brady bigger than the Patriots. And I think in the end, that's where you're going to see the fans, just like it happened there. And I remember that game, the Indy Denver game. It's going to come down to, what? We want to beat him bad. And it's going to be it will be the loudest crowd. It's funny you say that because I'm expecting moments like that. Because remember, people are going to be paying $8,000-$9,000 just to see a regular season football game on October 3rd. I will say, back to what you said, if this game, going back to the Peyton game, the Patriots are 3-0 going into this game, and Tampa's 3-0. Okay, this is even going to be just like a notched up higher, and then. And only then, there's only one chance of a bigger game, and that's if the two teams met in February. Mm-hmm. Wow, that'd be 2 weeks of dealing with this stuff. So I am looking forward to it, but this is a big year for the Patriots. A lot of new players. In the end, though, it's gonna be nice when this game's over, and then we can go on with our lives, because this is going to be the talk probably the first month of the season. And we'll be watching Tampa very closely, just like Brady's father will be watching us too. So it'll be fun.
No, and that's the way it was here. The whole way up to that game, it was really the only thing anyone talked about that season. Manning's coming back. It's going to be national television. It's going to be this huge event. And it lived up to the hype. That's one of the things that's so hard to do. I mean, a lot of times in these games, you get out there and the product on Sunday night is not. How can it live up to months of hype like this? But I think it'll be interesting. One thing I recall distinctly was so many of those horrible split jerseys. People with Manning's 18 on, and half of it's a Colts jersey and half of it's a Broncos jersey. Do you think that's going to happen up there in Boston?
Thank you for the warning. You know what? I'm going to write a story that better not happen. That kind of stuff will make me ill. I mean, you get a parent who's got a player on each team. Okay, that's fine. Maybe look, Eli versus Peyton. Okay, I can see the shirt. No. This is not. There will. It's funny that probably will happen, but I'm going to see if I can put a stop to it. Not that I'm a big deal, but the NFL was smart. They did this game. People are saying, why so early? You don't know. Patriots could be, 4-4, and it's just doesn't have the luster. Where the Patriots, they open with Miami home, probably should win that game. Then they're at the Jets, probably should win that game. Then they host New Orleans the next week. You know what? That's going to be a tough game, but I think the Patriots win that game. So it's 3-0, 3-0. The NFL basically planned this out. They want the biggest game in the history, and they got it.
No doubt NBC is going to be really excited about that. Before I let you go, there's one other thing we should talk about. Somebody we both had a lot of experience with over his career, Adam Vinatieri, announcing his retirement, I believe, last week. Is there any doubt this is the greatest kicker of all time?
Yeah, no, this has been some great kickers. The only thing I'll say about Adam Vinatieri is he the greatest kicker of all time? You know what? There's been 3 or 4 great ones. There's now one in the Hall of Fame. But I would say there's no kicker that you can say won a Super Bowl other than Adam Vinatieri. Every other kicker's had big kicks, and they've won games. He literally won a Super Bowl, and he then won a game that got him to the AFC Championship, which led to the Super Bowl. So that's a record. And then he's got the longevity record. What I love, look, I tweeted it out too. I think the underrated play of his career was catching Herschel Walker from behind on a kickoff. And then Herschel Walker, is taunting him after he made the tackle. And I'm going, what? You're the world-class Olympic sprinter, and this little dude from South Dakota State caught you. I love the guy, the competitor. He's a mentally as tough a player. He was a football player, and that's what he was. And I've heard other people say that because he played quarterback in high school. He wanted to play quarterback in college. They wouldn't let him. And then he figured out kicking. He took it up late. He was a soccer player, wasn't really a kicker, was a decent kicker. So Adam Vinatieri, he's a football player, and he's in my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer. And, I guess greatest kicker of all time, I guess we're going to have to give it to him. I was there, by the way, that snow kick. I was in the snow behind the uprights when that went through. I sort of snuck on the field, and which we could do back then at the old Sullivan, Schaefer, Foxborough Stadium, whatever the hell it was called. And that was one of the greatest moments in all my 35 years of covering that kick. I didn't expect it, but he was tough, man. Tough kid. Tough mentally kid, and I like him. I've seen him. He's gray as hell. He's like me, but he's an all-time great, and he's a Hall of Famer.
I asked him about that Herschel Walker play once, and I remember he said he caught him on a slow day, which I think a slow day for Herschel Walker is still a world-class day for everybody else. But yeah, I mean, to see what he did, and it didn't measure up to that kick, obviously, against the Raiders. But in 2017, there's a blizzard in Buffalo. The Colts end up getting a penalty. He's got to kick an extra point from 45 yards and send it to overtime. Nails it right through the snow. And I asked him afterwards, was it similar? And he said, yeah, but there was more wind the night in Foxborough. So I think, I don't know about greatest kicker. That's always going to be a debate. People are going to have their feelings on either side. I think, to me, if you get a little more specific, and I think importantly, the greatest clutch kicker in NFL history was Adam Vinatieri.
No question. Again, there's no kicker that's ever won a Super Bowl other than Adam. And I say won a Super Bowl a couple of times. And then he had the winning kick. It carved the middle. It was a 48-yarder. Nowadays that's probably easier said than done. But back in 2000, 2001, that was perfect. And as soon as he left his foot, he was celebrating. And I really liked him. Always liked him. One of the most confident people, and I've ever covered. And but very pleasant. Would answer questions. Had his rough moments. He would be tough sometimes. But look, he should have been a Patriot. I think he had his one year where he was franchised, and Belichick was not happy about that. And when you battle Belichick over money, you eventually, if you don't, I think, beg for forgiveness, you eventually get cast away. And it would have been, I think, it's remarkable because people look at him as a Patriot. He spent more time with the Colts, and he won a Super Bowl with the Colts as well, in 2006. So I'm a big fan, and I'm going to miss him. I was thinking he might even, I thought the Patriots might even make a run at him a year ago, and he obviously wasn't himself, and he's not going to come back and be Willie Mays here, kicking 50, 60%. So But big fan. One of my all-time favorite athletes covering.
I absolutely agree. Definitely one of a kind. All right, Bill, we'll wrap it up for this week, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Let's do it again. Good to see you.
Thanks, as always, to Bill for his time. You can follow his coverage of the New England Patriots on Twitter at Burt Talk Sports. You can follow my coverage of the Indianapolis Colts at GM Bremer. Now let's check in on Big Ten country with Kevin Brockway and Elton Hayes. Now it's time for our regular spot with Kevin Brockway and Elton Hayes. And guys, it's not specifically Big Ten related, but obviously the big national story, Coach K stepping down after next season, his replacement already in place. Elton, we'll start with you. What kind of an impact does this have on college basketball as a whole?
Well, college basketball is losing a historic figure. Someone had asked me yesterday if this was kind of similar to Paterno, notwithstanding the reasons why he left or was ousted at Penn State. But, having someone of that stature who's been around for that long, a guy like Coach K leaving, I said, yeah, it is. I mean, Coach K, I believe he began coaching at Duke in 1975, the second longest tenured coach. And I think it's very interesting for the state of North Carolina with their rival across the way there. Roy Williams announcing he was leaving, Coach K announcing he's leaving. So kind of seeing a changing of the guard. It's very interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Kevin, it's not obviously apples to apples, but you were at Florida when Billy Donovan moved on. He'd won a national title, took that program to heights it hadn't seen before. Obviously not the longevity that Krzyzewski had, but can you speak a little bit from that experience to what faces Jon Scheyer now trying to follow a guy who really created the basketball program as we know it at Duke?
Yeah, and I think, too, when you're talking about, Billy Donovan left for the NBA because of recruiting. And I think even with Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski, I think they're seeing the writing on the wall with NIL, with more player freedom, that their level of control in this whole, college basketball landscape wouldn't be the same. And I think that's another reason why you're seeing a lot of these coaches. I think Jim Boeheim will be the next to go. The days of the coach being the arbiter, the judge, and the jury are over. Student athletes are having more rights. So this is the new world in which Jon Scheyer comes into. It's the new world that Mike White came into after Billy Donovan, where the transfer portal, where there's a lot more freedom of movement, and coaches have to adjust, and Scheyer is going to have to adjust. I mean, it's hard to build a team anymore through a nucleus. Which is, part of the reason that coaches like Donovan and Coach K were successful. I mean, if you take a look at the last two coaches that have led teams to back-to-back national championships, was Billy Donovan and Mike Krzyzewski. And how did they do it? By having a core of great players that stuck around for a while. You're not going to see that anymore. So it's a much more transient college basketball landscape that we're dealing with, and today's coaches have to adjust to that.
There's no doubt about it. Elton, you mentioned Paterno earlier. James Franklin obviously wasn't the next guy, but he's still coaching in that shadow. He's had success. What do you think does it take to put your own imprint at a place where there is such a mythic figure in the past?
I think you kind of have to look at Alabama and the way Saban's done it. I think the only way to really do that is through longevity, sustained success with longevity. Saban went down to Alabama, and anyone there is going to live in his shadow. And I mean, throughout Saban's tenure, no disrespect to Coach Bryant, but I mean, he surpassed his legacy. I think Scheyer, God help him. He's a 33-year-old. I believe his birthday is in August, so he'll be 34. He's got some big shoes to fill, and I don't. You never want to be the guy to follow the guy. And I know he's one of Duke's own. He played there as an alumnus, but I do not envy him. I do not want. I don't wish to be in his shoes at all.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at just the recent past, North Carolina, it took them a while after Dean Smith retired to get to Roy Williams. They had some lean years there. They had the Matt Doherty experiment that didn't go well. Bill Guthridge had a couple good years taking over as a longtime assistant, but it didn't work out. Florida State had a good run with Jimbo Fisher after Bobby Bowden, but they're kind of feeling that crunch now. There was a wide gap at Ohio State between Woody Hayes and Jim Tressel bringing about the success. It's definitely not easy. Kevin, it's a different level, obviously, but Brad Stevens' name continues to come up in college basketball over and over again. We see stepping down as a Celtics coach, moving up into the front office. Is this going to increase the amount of rumors that he's headed back to the college game eventually?
Yeah, and you would think that Duke would have been a landing spot had they not announced the coach in waiting in John Shire. I think that was kind of the expectation or the thought. And now, the Indiana rumors can pipe up again if things don't work out with Mike Woodson in a few years. But I think they're hopeful that things will work out with Mike Woodson and with his staff. But it's going to be interesting to see if, Brad Stevens will have that itch if he stays for a year or two at, the front office level with the Celtics, if he's bored by it or if he enjoys it. I think he strikes me as a guy that I think is going to enjoy the challenge of the front office and enjoy the challenge of building it while having someone on the court. I think the problem with the Celtics was, the Nets came along and built a super team, right? Because they were on the come. They looked like that they were going to be the team that was going to take the mantle in the Eastern Conference, and their window closed. Gordon Hayward, the former Butler star, got hurt and then left in free agency, and then Kyrie Irving left for the Nets. So that kind of led to Brad Stevens' maybe downfall as a coach, and Danny Ainge deciding to step aside as a personnel guy. So it's an interesting dynamic there, but we could see Brad Stevens back on the college coaching sidelines in a few years.
Yeah, I figure anybody with an opening who's got any kind of tradition, you're going to hear his name every year now, probably for the next few years. It's been that way. Just feels like it's going to ramp up a little bit more. Elton, getting back to normal a little bit more and more each day. A big thing this week, recruiting opens back up in person, on campus recruiting on June 1st. How big of a deal is this in college sports?
It's major. It is major. I know here in Penn State, it has almost felt like Christmas watching social media and looking at these coaches, Penn State coaches on the timeline tweet all of their excitement. I know they had a couple guys coming in later this month, guys that Penn State definitely want to get on campus to kind of get this environment. State College is kind of in a bubble. You're not really traveling here on the way to somewhere else. So, one of Penn State's biggest draws is getting the kids on campus and just being in this atmosphere. Another thing that worked us out in Penn State's favor on the first also was the athletic department announcing that it was opening fan attendance to 100% in the fall. So yeah, we're getting there. I don't want to jinx anything, knock on wood, but it feels like we're inching back toward normal.
Yeah, Kevin, along those lines, Elton kind of mentioned the fan situation. Last year, Big Ten football stadiums, basketball arenas sat relatively empty. I think friends and family were allowed, but that's about it. Getting the fans back, how's that going to change the game this fall?
Yeah, no question. I think it's going to create an exciting atmosphere for all involved. Indiana, right now, they haven't announced full capacity yet, but they're operating that way. In talking to people in the ticket office, season tickets are up 10%. It's certainly a very exciting time for Indiana football in terms of the fact that, 14-7 over the last two seasons, what Tom Allen is building back-to-back January games. But it will be interesting to see when Indiana goes to Happy Valley next year, when they go to Michigan and they face those big crowds, how are they going to react? That's as opposed to playing in some of the empty stadiums. Does that take the pressure off a little bit and how it impacts execution too? Because you get really loud in there, the signals, the audibles, etc. It'll be an interesting dynamic to see how Indiana responds to that pressure when they go on the road and face some full stadiums that they didn't face last year.
Absolutely. Inching more and more towards the new normal every day. I know there's going to be a lot to talk about as we get closer to the season. Guys, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll talk to you again here in a couple of weeks.
Good seeing you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Kevin and Elton. You can follow Kevin and the Indiana Hoosiers at Kevin Brockway G1. You can follow Elton and the Penn State Nittany Lions at EHDC12. Now for a national perspective, let's check in with Clay Horning. Now it's time to check in with our national columnist, Clay Horning. And Clay, we're coaching girls minor softball team this year. So there's a lot of learning moments and teaching moments. And the Cubs and the Pirates kind of gifted us with one last week. The crazy Javi Baez play ran back towards the plate. I'm not really sure what the Pirates were thinking. How that play ends up with a run scored and a runner on second. If you run it 1,000 times, that's the outcome probably only that time.
That's right.
Have you ever seen anything quite like this, at least in recent times?
No, I haven't. But when I was watching, well, no, never. But when I was watching the ESPN guys talk about it, and Tim Kirchin mentioned this moment where Gleyber Torres was on second base and came all the way around to home while I believe the shortstop held the ball in sort of short left center field, 15 feet out of the infield. But he had nowhere to throw the ball because nobody was covering third base where Torres originally ran, and then nobody was covering the plate. The catcher was actually running to cover third but couldn't get there in time, and then had no time to get back as he rounded third. And so that's sort of crazy in its own way. But no, I've never seen anything like it. And what is the first baseman's name for Pittsburgh on that play? That's the one name I keep drawing blanks when I try to remember it. Oh, shoot. Anyway, well, so when I first saw the play, I was like, all right, I see Baez is jogging back to the plate, and the first baseman sort of chasing him a little bit, like half-heartedly. And then you see him sort of panic, throw the ball home. Why is he throwing the ball home? Oh, there's a person sliding into the plate. And so and my first thought, and I think this is a lot of people's first thought, and I think it explains what the first baseman was thinking was, well, God, he fooled around so long, he let a run come home. But he didn't, because that run never counts, even if an hour after he crossed the plate, Baez is tagged or forced out at first before he gets to first. And to me, that's the disconnect. That's sort of the wonderful thing about it, is that you think all the craziness is the jogging back and the little flip to home, but no, the craziness is that Baez still has to reach first for any of that to count.
Yeah.
And now I can hit names. I remember Adam Frazier, second baseman for Pittsburgh. He runs over to cover first. They try to throw to him. They throw wide, and it glances off his glove. And 7 Pirates touch the ball on this play. That's incredible. Everybody but the center fielder and the left fielder, which is just nuts. And and if you watch, I don't know if you've seen the replay since you read what I wrote about it, but Baez wonderfully calls Wilmer Contreras wonderfully calls him safe, along with the umpire at the plate. And then I swear, and also another one of the best parts of it, he gets to first after they eventually, all the craziness in the throw, glances off the second baseman's glove, is trying to cover first. He gets to first with a head first slide. Why is he sliding head first? I don't know. But it did give him the opportunity while lying. I swear to God, his hands are, well, I can't make it. His hands are spread, and he spreads them like 3 more inches while on his belly. And I swear he's calling himself safe again. That's what he's doing. So anyway, it was just, I think it was fabulous and wonderful and awful and crazy. And I do believe that baseball gives you these moments, not like that. But I mean, I covered. I remember the last state high school baseball tournament I covered. On one day, I saw an infield triple, legit infield triple. It was windy. 5 guys were looking at it. It just glanced off a glove. it just glanced off a glove, and the guy was running the whole way. He got to third. I saw a guy go first to home on a single because he never stopped, and the left fielder kind of took his time and it's kind of lobbed it back into the infield to the shortstop, and the guy just came all the way home. Baseball does things like this. It's crazy that way. And you would think that it couldn't, that if you watched a season of baseball, because every team plays 162 games, and I think there's 30 of them, which is, there ought to be 32. We wouldn't have to have interleague, but there's only 30. So there are more, like, the guy that is you love because he's the voice of your team and he calls the football. If he calls baseball too, he calls a lot more baseball games than he calls football games in the course of a season. And yet I submit to you, you can watch 10 baseball games and you will see something you've never seen before. And you could watch 50 football games and that won't happen. I mean, so I just think that's, I don't know. I tried to kind of put that into the column that, I mean, this is, and the way baseball is being played now, I fear we're getting less and less of those moments. This was an outlier. This is an all-timer. But it is still reminds me that you see crazy stuff on the baseball field, stuff that just, that if you spend a lifetime watching, you're still like, wait, does that ever happen? So anyway, those are my thoughts that I fear we haven't given it justice. You need to watch the play. Yeah.
I think, first of all, and you kind of touched on it, it's a sign that we need the ball in play, because you put the ball in play, crazy things happen. It's not a walk, not a strikeout, not a home run. Exciting things can happen. I thought it was an interesting point you brought up, too, because my thought all along on this is if at any point the first baseman just turns around and touches the bag, the play's over. But you make an even more important point here. He doesn't even have to do that. If he just stands where he is, Baez has to get the first base. If he just stops at any point, Baez has to come through him. If he goes out of baseline, he's out. It was the most avoidable mishap probably in the history of Major League Baseball.
I know.
In so many ways. But I also think it's evidence that baseball or softball, both of them, the most unforgiving, the most humbling games out there, and even the best players in the world can do these things that you would be yelling at your little leaguers for.
Well, sure, that's right. And think about this. At any point before he was trying to get there too late, Adam Frazier, the second baseman for the Pirates, he could have gone at any point. Oh, I don't know why, but this might come up. I should probably go over and cover first base. Or him and 7 other fielders in play could have been screaming, tag him, tag him, tag him. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that either. I don't think the umpire's supposed to even call safe on that play at the plate. I think he's supposed to watch it and wait for the play to carry itself out. And if Baez is made out before reaching first base, if they'd thrown him out at second on the throw that got away, the run counts, But if they tag him or force him out before he gets to first, because even if they tag him, it is still, quote, a force because he must run to first. That's why they don't call it a force because you step on the base. They call it a force because the runner is forced to go to that base. So anyway, which I'll bet, which is something I've not thought of in 30 years, but now it occurs to me that's why they call it a force. And so my point is all the players were sort of mesmerized and faked out by the play. The umpire was mesmerized and faked out for the play. I had heard it said that they awarded Baez first base on a fielder's choice. I looked at the box score of the game. The name escapes me again, but the first baseman of Pirates was given 2 errors in that inning, 1 later. But so there was an error given to him. I was afraid that there wasn't because he didn't throw wildly anywhere. He didn't fail to catch the ball, which a lot of official scores in baseball feel hamstrung when things like that happen. And I always feel like if it's a play that should have been made, it doesn't matter if it glanced off your glove or not. It's an error. It's just it's just crazy. And and a part of this discussion on ESPN, I'll bring it up here, is that they mention we're going to see fielders do crazy things, not like this, but do crazy things because the play I mentioned earlier, Gleyber Torres coming all the way around at first, nobody's covering the bag because you don't drill for that. You're in these crazy shifts. Baseball conventionally, if you were watching it from a drone or from up in the ground, it's like this sort of dance. When the ball gets in play, you go here, you back up here, you back up here. And that's getting lost in all of these shifts. So if the batting team against these shifts would say, we're going to bunt it down that baseline 5 straight times where they're not covering it, guess what? They won't shift the rest of the series. If they're in for 4 games, they won't shift the next 3.5. So it's and in a world where fielders can get lost, you could still, if you were willing to be unconventional, attack that defense. And we might get more plays like that, but it's not happening now. And I'm for rules changes to give us back the game we kind of grew up with. But it does sort of tell me that if in an age of all these crazy shifts, if the team at the plate would itself adapt and not be thinking about how many home runs I have this season when I go to arbitration or whatever, which is, I'm not trying to be 85 years old and these kids today play for too much money. I don't even mean that. I just think that power is better than average and all of these things has been taken to such an extreme that baseball players in the major leagues right now are not even asked to be able to handle all the skills of the game, to be able to bunt, to be able to make contact when at this point in time, we don't need it over the fence. We need a ball in play. We need the runner from second to get to third. If you get a base hit, even better, so there are things they could do right now without changing the rules. If the batting team would cooperate, there are things they can do with the rules. I'm for all those things. And I just want baseball to be good and plentiful and have all of its elements be part of the game in a way it more traditionally has, because it is when all those elements are part of the game that it becomes such a better game. It's why even though we may not be able to sit through 9 innings on television, it still holds a place in our heart,
Absolutely. Get them over, get them in is a thing of the past. There's no question about it. Thanks a lot. We're out of time this week, but we will check in again here in a couple weeks.
All right. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
And thanks as always to our national sports columnist. You can follow Clay on Twitter @ClayHorning. And thanks again to all of you. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.